Welcome back to the Vale Echo. Tonight we travel deep into the Appalachian Mountains, a place where fog rolls over endless ridges and every whisper seems to echo forever. This is Pine Hollow, a small forgotten town tucked away from the modern world. Locals say the woods here never truly sleep, and some sounds that drift through the trees aren't meant to be heard. It was here, in the early autumn of 1986, that two sisters, Anna and Lily Richards, vanished without a trace. They were last seen walking along an old forest trail, laughing, carrying their school bags, and heading home before sunset. But the mountains have a way of swallowing sound and sometimes people. Their home sat on the edge of the woods, a small wooden cabin surrounded by tall pines. Their mother, Martha Richards, had dinner waiting, stew simmering on the stove, a lantern glowing on the porch. But as night fell, the forest grew still. No laughter, no footsteps, just the hum of crickets and the slow creep of fog rising between the trees. Hours passed. The road outside the cabin, usually silent, glowed faintly under the moonlight. Martha stepped out with her lantern, calling for her daughters, her voice trembling, echoing back from the woods. The only answer was the sound of rustling leaves and the faraway cry of an owl. By midnight, the town sheriff had arrived. Flashlights cut through the mist as officers scoured the narrow dirt road, tire marks, small footprints, and then nothing. Near a broken bridge over a shallow creek, they found the sisters' belongings, a backpack, a necklace, and a small red ribbon tangled in the mud. It looked as if someone or something had led them off the trail. As the search widened, locals whispered about strange lights seen in the forest that night. An old hunter swore he heard crying near the abandoned mine entrance, though when he went back with others, the sound had stopped. The fog was so thick that even the dogs refused to move forward. By dawn, the small town of Pine Hollow had transformed into a search zone. Volunteers gathered at the diner, sipping cold coffee, scanning the old newspaper headlines. "Richard's sisters missing," the bold letters read. Fear hung heavier than the mountain mist. The woods became both a mystery and a warning. Some said the sisters were taken by someone hiding deep in those hills, others believed Pine Hollow's dark folklore had come to life once more. But no one knew for sure. As the sun rose over the Appalachians, its golden light barely pierced the fog that clung to the valley. The Richards' cabin stood silent, two empty chairs on the porch, a mother still calling into the pines. And from somewhere deep in the forest, carried on the wind, came a faint whisper. "Anna, Lily." The mountains, it seemed, were listening. Days turned into weeks, and Pine Hollow was no longer the quiet town it once was. Search parties scoured every inch of the Appalachian forest, men with flashlights, dogs sniffing through wet leaves, the echo of their voices fading into the endless green. Hope began to wither like the autumn leaves around them. At the center of the search stood Sheriff Dale Harper, a man who'd grown up in these mountains and knew their moods better than anyone. Yet even he confessed that Pine Hollow's woods felt different now, heavier, quieter, almost watching. Late one night, he stood over an old map spread across his desk, marking zones in red. The creek, the old trail, and finally the abandoned coal mine that no one dared to enter since it collapsed decades ago. That same evening, a local hunter came forward, his face pale, hands trembling as he spoke. "I heard them," he said, "voices crying down near the mine." The townsfolk gathered around, the diner's neon sign flickering behind them. Some shook their heads, others crossed themselves. They all knew the stories, that the mine was cursed, that strange lights sometimes flickered inside when the fog rolled in thick. The next morning, Sheriff Harper led a small team to the site. The entrance was nearly hidden beneath vines and rusted warning signs. "Danger, keep out," the faded letters warned. The air was damp, cold, and filled with the faint scent of earth and rust. As the group stepped inside, their flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating rotting beams and the echoing drip of water. Then something caught their attention, a torn piece of fabric snagged on a broken nail. It matched the color of Anna Richards' jacket. The air turned colder. The deeper they went, the quieter it became, until all they could hear was the sound of their own breathing. Outside, rain began to fall. Thunder cracked over the valley as the storm rolled in. At the Richards' cabin, Martha sat by the window, watching the forest flash with lightning. The rocking chair on the porch creaked as the wind howled through the pines. She whispered prayers into the dark, clutching an old Polaroid of her daughters, two smiling faces frozen in time. Back at the mine, one of the deputies swore he saw a shadow move between the beams, tall, silent, gone in an instant. They called out, but no answer came. Only the faint echo of footsteps deeper inside, footsteps that didn't belong to any of them. By dawn, the team emerged shaken, empty-handed, and silent. Whatever they'd seen or thought they'd seen, none of them could explain. The forest had swallowed another piece of the truth. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the sisters had been lured by something not human. Others whispered about a figure that wandered the mountains, a legend the elders called the Watcher of Hollow Creek. But the sheriff wasn't done. Somewhere in those woods, buried under fog roots and secrets, the truth waited. And the trail, though faint, wasn't cold yet. Weeks passed, and the search for the Richards sisters began to fade from headlines. Pine Hollow returned to a fragile silence, but something beneath that quiet felt wrong, like a wound that refused to heal. Sheriff Harper refused to close the case. Late nights he sat in his dim office, the evidence board glowing under a single bulb. Photos of the sisters, the map of the valley, red strings connecting places no one dared go anymore. The forest, it seemed, was keeping its own secrets. Then a strange report came in. A hiker claimed to have found something near the old cemetery that overlooked the valley, an area long abandoned and swallowed by vines. The sheriff and his team went at dawn. Fog blanketed the graves like a shroud, and the air was heavy with the scent of rain and earth. Beneath a crooked oak they found it, a small, rusted locket cracked open with two faded photos inside, Anna and Lily. The find reignited the town's obsession. Locals gathered in whispers once more, talking about the old legends, the ghost lights that flickered in the mountains, the voices that called lost travelers deeper into the trees. Some even claimed to have seen two faint figures walking along the ridgeline at night, vanishing when called to. Sheriff Harper pressed on, returning to the forest with a renewed purpose. He followed the creek downstream where the sisters' belongings had first been found. The water was low now, revealing stones marked with strange carvings, patterns older than any of the town's history. Following the markings led him to a narrow opening in the cliffside, half hidden by moss and shadows. Inside, the air was colder. The tunnel twisted deep beneath the mountain, narrow and suffocating. The beam of his flashlight flickered against walls carved with more of the same symbols, and then he heard it, a whisper, faint, childlike, drifting through the darkness. "Help us." He froze. The sound came again, clearer, closer. He called their names, his voice trembling, echoing down the tunnel. No response, only the sound of something moving, slow, deliberate, just out of sight. He stepped forward, every breath echoing against the stone, until the tunnel opened into a small cavern. In the center lay an old lantern, still faintly glowing, untouched by time. On the ground beside it, a pair of muddy shoes. The kind the Richards sisters wore to school. Harper knelt, his heart pounding. The air grew colder. Behind him, the faint sound of footsteps, small, synchronized, filled the cave. He spun around, but there was nothing. Only the echo of his own breath bouncing off the walls. He backed away slowly, leaving the cave behind, the whispers fading as the forest swallowed the sound once more. When he emerged, dawn was breaking over the Appalachian ridges, golden light spilling over an ocean of mist. The truth about what happened to Anna and Lily Richards would never be written in any report. Because some stories in Pine Hollow aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be remembered.